So, yet another installment into the hidden history of the African American warrior, who was the youngest service member to die in Vietnam. Well, I can tell you, it was Dan Bullock, a young African American originally from North Carolina, Goldsboro, North Carolina. His parents took him to Brooklyn, New York, where they lived for the most part in poverty. And he saw the military as a way to get out of it. Well, let me just tell you what he did. He decided to falsify his birth certificate. He was 14 years old when he joined. You heard me right. His brother wanted to join the United States military so bad that he falsified his birth certificate. In 1968, it was September 18th, 1968, 14-year-old Dan Bullock joined the United States Marine Corps. Weighing about 5'9", weighing about 160 pounds, 5'9" in height. He wasn't very agile in boot camp. He was a young boy. Made it through, however. He did, and he was in Vietnam all of 1 month before he was killed. He was 15 years old at that time, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, it speaks volumes about him and what was happening back in 1968, even there in Brooklyn, New York. It also speaks volumes, ladies and gentlemen, about the kind of young man he was. When you go to the wall, here's what you'll see inscribed. You did it for me, you did it for your father, you did it for the United States. As Sandra Hoskins put it. All right, Happy New Year to you. So you made it through 2017. You ever thought you'd do that? Well, you did. So now you're on 2018. Feel great about that? Optimistic, are you? Feel like you're gonna make this a better year than you did last year? The short answer's got to be yes. You feel that way, Ro?
Absolutely.
What about you, Whitlock?
This year's the year.
You feel that optimistic, do you?
It has to be better than the last.
Huh.
Dang.
You don't have any choice, do you?
Huh.
You can't go back to the last.
No, you can't.
You can't go past this one, can you? You might as
will.
well make this one
a better year.
Absolutely. Any indicators, though, Ro, that you can see that would give you the impression that this year is going to be better?
Yes, there are several, actually. The way we ended last year is a big one. Certain folks being brought to task for being just inappropriate all over the board, whether it be misconduct in the workplace or misconduct socially. I think that spirit will carry over and continue into the new year.
Yeah. So the fact that people are becoming more active
is
yes. encouraging.
More active, more vocal, wanting to make sure that certain folks are being held accountable. I just hope that it goes all the way down and all the way up.
Mm. What about you, Whitlock? What encouraging signs you see?
I'm thinking about it as a personal thing, but I can co-sign what Ro just said about people being more vocal and aware and participating. But as far as I go, I just feel that I'm going to have a better year based upon the year I had.
Well, it's good to be optimistic.
Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, there are signs. And for those of us who've been around a little bit longer, we look at those signs. I think it's always been. I think long before we had so-called civilized mankind, that's what that early man had to do. He had to be able to annotate the seasons without having a calendar. And he based his observations on whether it was get cold or hot on the signs, whether the birds were going north or south, whether or not there was a very red sunset or sunrise. A lot of things was done to measure the signs. Tree barks get thicker sometimes with anticipation of very cold winters. So, they're signs. And God knows my father and his father knew them very, very well. But there are signs also, ladies and gentlemen, with people and with trends when it comes down to the economy and when it comes to politics. And you could read the so-called tea leaves. and be able to kind of figure out, or at the very least, prepare for what you anticipate happening as a result of the signs. I'm optimistic about Rip Daniels and his future. There's no doubt about that, but the signs are not looking good for me. With the bellicose discussions happening from the White House, I feel that there is a greater possibility that there will, in fact, be a conflict, war, far greater than what we have now. You see, it just goes to show, I mean, if you pick fights long enough, sooner or later you'll have one. No guarantee you'll win it. However, that's what we have. The signs telling me now, just starting there first and foremost, is that they're more than likely, with the beefing up of the United States military, with the fact that even the military now is seeking to, of course, I think they backed off on it. They were seeking to actually enlist men who are of shady character, some of the alt-right, or even some of those who had ingested, who had drug problems, or even suicidal problems. I mean, John McCain had to get the United States Pentagon to back off on that recruitment. Recruitment was down. But when you see a president who is pushing to increase that he's not just doing that out of, generosity to those guys, like in the case of Dan Bullock, wanting to get him out of the projects. No. There's an anticipation that there is going to be a military conflict. All the signs are there. Even over the weekend, there was assertions, insults passed, thrown around, just, very trite and trivial, childish kind of insults thrown at the Jong-un there in North Korea. Something that an announcer would say, Rocket Man. That's the kind of stuff we do. But this guy's an entertainer, and so therefore he realizes that at least with his base, that sounds cool. So that combined with the fact that that you've got, you've got some interesting winds blowing when it comes down to Russia. Now they're contemplating arming some of the Ukrainians, West Ukrainians. You've got, how do you put this? You've got situation right now that's happening in Iran. Some of you maybe have seen the protest and so forth, basically socioeconomic in stature. Donald John had to weigh in, of course. Not the first time the Iranians have had this situation. Actually, when President Barack Obama was president, you had great protest. Because, contrary to what you might believe, Iranian is not the bastion of Muslim extremism. On the other hand, you do have the Ayatollah still exist in the faith, should I say. But you've got the meddling. You've got a president who won't leave it alone. I mean, he doesn't walk softly and carry a big stick. And the way he handles this, it's more about gloating and posturing. Because he feels he's got the biggest hammer. And he's just looking for a nail. That is the United States military. So I dare say to you, ladies and gentlemen, it would not surprise me whether this would be the year 2018 that we will be involved in a very serious military conflict. So I don't feel good about that. I'm not optimistic because of the signs. I mean, if you can show me some signs whereby there is some, should I say, peace, then do that. Even when it comes down to this president's posture as it applies to the UN. I mean, just prior to the end of the year, I mean, most countries participating in the UN voted against the decision by our president to actually move the embassy. I mean, it's just, to what end is the question. To what end? If not for some kind of strife. In other words, be it, embassies really have become passé anyway, ladies and gentlemen, with the advent of, outside of protecting the citizens of any one country, the idea of having an embassy or a consulate, it's just a place to do business per se. But, I mean, right now, You know, there was a time when you had to have a place to go and sign the documents and touch and feel the diplomats and all that, but it's become passe. You know, speaking of that, actually, even Congress and the legislatures have become passe. Just going there to have the assembly. Most of the time when you go to Washington, D.C., as have I, you know, you'll go into the Capitol, and very few people are there. I mean, you will see some congressman that's giving speeches to empty chairs. I mean, it's just saying stuff for the record. It's just very rare, which is another topic altogether. Other signs, Rip Daniels. Let's see. Economically, I think we're in the same place we were. Let's see, when Ronald Reagan was president, and we went through the tax cuts. And over 8 years, ultimately, it resulted in George Herbert Walker Bush having to be a one-term president because he had to raise taxes. We were there as well. You know, of course, coming out of that, then you had Bill Clinton. The taxes were raised, and then we get George W. Bush, 2001, and of course we cut taxes. And look, folks, I'm not a tax hawk, by no means. I would just as soon not pay. But the trends and the signs have shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that every time we have done this, going back even to JFK, there's been this whole concept of economic growth. Some of you theorize that it was as a result of the tax cut, but reality-wise, even during JFK, it was out of manufacturing. It was the kind of economies that we had, not the cutting in the taxes. Not that I don't like that. Don't interpret it that way. I'm just simply saying there is this theory put forward by oxyconservatives. Oh, you cut taxes, you raise revenue. Bull crap. In other words, they feel that there's a congruency between cutting taxes and revenue going up, when quite the contrary has been proven. George W. Bush cut taxes, and we went into the largest recession we've ever had. 2008. Come on, you remember that? Bailing out all the big boys? That was after a tax cut. When Kennedy cut taxes, ladies and gentlemen, taxes on the so-called 1%, very rich, and the corporations was up at 90%. He cut taxes 20%. Actually, I say he. But actually, it was John Lyndon Banks Johnson. Actually, JFK was killed 2 years after being elected. So, look, the sign for me now as a business person is uncertainty, once again. That combined with the fact that I'm seeing mega companies merge. I'm seeing super mega companies merging. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, folks. You know, there was a time when, going back to, I think, the Reagan administration, when Ma Bell had to break up. Anyone remember this? Coming out of Jimmy Carter, going into...
Or broken up, right?
Absolutely. Ma Bell, which was the big telecommunications. I mean, they handled all long distance, all of that. So there were some things that was happening here whereby you rather than having these huge mergers, you had quite the contrary. You had actually monopolies being, by way of the antitrust laws, being broken up. It made sense. I'm a small business guy. What I don't want are mega companies getting larger, because they gobble up the little guys. You want to know what happened to the mom and pop restaurants? Well, McDonald's. And I'm not knocking McDonald's, but the Burger King, McDonald's, the chains, the franchises. And some of you, I know that they provide jobs. I got you. Look, you don't have to tell me, but you don't have an idea of America before you had that. I do. You know, before you had the Walmarts and so forth, you had the Autolets, you had the True Values, you had the hardware stores, and then you had the individual hardware stores all over America, where little mom and pops were able to do some pretty good living. So what I'm seeing here, the tea leaves are telling me, and what I'm seeing the signs here is that, you know what? We've been here before. I gave the same advice, ladies and gentlemen, when George W. Bush was elected. And that was pay down your debt. And pay down your debt and save money. I'm going to give you the same advice now. I actually went to a place the other day that actually charged you extra for using cash. That scared me. Anyone ever see that before? If you use cash, we don't take cash. No cash. I mean, have you noticed if any of you who go to New Orleans and so forth, the number of parking lots where you can only use a credit card? Heaven forbid you get in the parking lot and don't read the sign that says credit cards only. You get in there, you got your cash. I don't care how much cash you got, you can't get out. But I actually went to a place where you got cash. Well, we don't take cash here. To take cash is going to be something extra. I decided to do business somewhere else. So the signs for me are not very good signs. They're just not. I don't want to. By my saying this, it's not designed to give you any kind of pessimism. It just simply says you need to be prepared. Really do. I'm not overly enthusiastic about the stock market either. When you look at the kinds of stocks that's doing well, there's no reason in the world why oil stocks are doing well, except for the fact that they're being manipulated. So now you open up the Alaskan reserves. Now you could go in and you can go out in the Gulf of Mexico. There's a move to open up more areas for oil exploration, and the reality is always at an all-time low. And the reality is, for me, is there's no reason. Demand. I mean, look, folks, America is exporting. As much as we import, actually exporting more as a result of natural gas. But yet the stocks are doing good. They're up. However, medical stocks are down. Go figure. Pharmaceutical stocks are holding fast. But medical stocks are strange. It's just kind of a strange situation. Maybe it's because there is some thought that you won't have Obamacare. Which brings me to this. There's another sign. The sign that actually you would have a Congress, a conservative-led Congress, so in quotes, that would actually, not expect for Americans to pay for their own insurance. Now, you can't get more conservative than this. You realize the requirement, the mandate, as it's called, tax is what the Supreme Court called it, because that's what it is. The one that says that if by chance you don't get insurance, then you've got. Have you had to do that? To pay the mandate?
If you don't have insurance to pay with your taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the first year, yes.
First year, you paid the mandate.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually have to, but I had to go through and see if I had to.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, good. However, if you had to, what would it have been?
A couple $100.
Now, a couple of $100 compared to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in insurance payments for the year.
Worth it.
One would think that.
Yeah.
And the reason why you're paying is this. The reason why you had to pay that mandate is, okay, so if by chance you're making under a certain amount and you get sick or you get ill, then that means the Medicaid will kick in and it's just a small contribution you'd make.
Makes sense. Sounds like it makes sense.
Now, this doesn't make sense to a conservative. It just baffles me, ladies and gentlemen. This is another sign to me. This is another sign.
Sign of future things to come.
Well, it's a sign of double standard, first and foremost. Secondly, it is a sign to me that the application of what is conservative is now changed. It is. The idea that we would get rid of a mandate that said that Roe or anyone else, typically most young people or people who are making under a certain amount who could not afford insurance would have to put in something. The idea that you will not expect that but yet say they want free stuff is just a contradiction. They want free stuff, but yet you get rid of a mandate that says that if you do get sick, you got to make a small contribution. And each one of those, on your check, Roe, you're going to pay Medicare. That's a mandate.
That's a mandate. I don't have a choice.
But you can't collect. You can't get Medicare.
Probably will never see it.
Until you're, 65 years old?
At least.
Or you have some kind of ultimate debilitating, life-threatening disease.
God forbid.
I think. I don't know. I think even then it's Medicaid. I don't know whether Medicare would even kick in. With some of you guys who work in the medical profession, let me know. I don't want to just say stuff that's incorrect. So it's a sign for me. The idea that in my great country there is They're still not assuring up. What we've just done was we've turned the clock back, ladies and gentlemen, as it applies to health care and the affordability thereof. I was there before Obamacare, and let me just tell you, insurance, there was nothing to stop them from terminating you and from it going up. It was going up and up. That drastically slowed, and even some cases went back. I know in my case it did. My insurance actually, I paid less during Obamacare. That's not a good sign for me. It's not a good sign for me that okay, here we have a Congress who would just make that move, and then all of a sudden. So my question for you then, you got 17 million people now who are not going to pay in anything into the coffers, and then added to that, we're going to cut the taxes on the top 1%. But we've got a budget that's calling for $8.5 trillion to be spent in this fiscal year, which is about $2 billion less in collections when you add in the tax cuts. I don't want to make it complicated, but it's like, okay, I'm going to spend $800, but I'm only going to make $600, which means you got to borrow.
The 800's already spent, though.
That's called a deficit, already committed. You know, you got baseline budgeting, which basically means, ladies and gentlemen, the entitlements are going to go up regardless. You know, 3/4 of our budget is basically that. And you may not like that, but let me just tell you, to have a healthy society is very crucial, in my view, to having a healthy country. Some people don't see it that way, especially those who are what I call Republicrats. They hadn't figured it out. These are the individuals who feel that somehow or another they are entitled to get it because they are more American than others. You know, I'm poor, but I'm not like those guys over there. They look different, have different hair and the like. All right, lot to cover, a short period of time, and we're going to cover all of it. I see that Port High has the first African-American mayor, second largest city in the nation. I'm sorry, in the state, and they finally get an African-American
head coach.
Head coach, yeah, John Archer. Yeah. Might want to chat with him somewhere down the line.
Mm-hmm. Coming out of Madison, looking good.
Yeah. What took him so long was the question. No others qualified, one would ask. All right, I want to go to several things here, folks. I was looking at the number of President Donald John's appointees and hirings, the number of those individuals who've fraternized with Russians. Now look, you might want to hold fast to what you want to believe, but don't let your investigative senses deceive you. There's something happening here. I couldn't believe this. Literally everybody that he has, with the exception of Carson, wrote in his cabinet. Carson and maybe what's her name? Mitch McConnell's wife. What is she? Interior Secretary? The Asian woman. But I look at this going back to when he was elected. Just the number of people now who have had dealings with Russians. I don't know anyone who cannot see the collusion here.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the only two who have not been implicated are Dr. Ben Carson and Elaine Chao, the Secretary of the Transportation.
Right.
And, you know, one could argue that this is reaching, but if every single person has a tie, I mean every person has a tie, except 2 people, 3 people at the most. There's something to be looked at and heavily scrutinized there. So folks making this argument that there's nothing there and there's no there, well, just be patient. Just be really patient.
The point is that you just can't ignore this now. It's better to be safe than sorry. And I think the investigation, and now Nunes in the House of Representatives is trying to get rid of Mueller. Let me just tell you what I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict that there will be a charge of obstruction of justice. There's no other way you can actually see that when it comes to the firing of Comey. I don't know how you're going to fire the FBI director who's investigating the connection of the Russians and your administration.
A charge for who, though? For the president?
I think there'll be a charge on the president, yes. I think there will be. I don't see any way out. I just don't. Was there obstruction there? And still, I mean, with the pressure that Jeff Sessions is under. I don't know. I don't know how you can look at this and not see, well, okay, well, if you fire the guy that's investigating you, what is that?
That would be obstructing the process, at least.
Interestingly enough, we've not heard much from Paul Manafort since he's under house arrest, go figure. I mean, it's been almost a month now. Guy's been under house arrest that long. Remember this guy?
Yeah.
You know, it's just this list I'm looking at, it just goes on and on and on. And some people feel that this will end up with nothing more than a slap on the hand. I don't think that, folks. I don't think that. And I'll tell you why I don't think that. I think that every one of those individuals who are working, be it for the FBI or the United States military, swear an oath of allegiance, not loyalty to Donald John, but to the Constitution. And I'm going to tell you, Oxford Conservative Talk Radio has done a pretty good job of, again, the double standard. The standards that they would place and toward and the expectations they'd have on any other president, with the exception of this one. Let me tell you, you guys have proven me beyond a shadow of a doubt that you'll sell your soul to the devil. I mean, every one of these guys know that there was every reason to be very suspicious of Donald John running. Don't play like me, like you. For this guy to run in the first place, it was a little bit odd, strange, unusual, queer. And many of them didn't think this guy should be president. But for the sake of beating Hillary, I don't care what it is. I'd vote for a broomstick. And that was the thought. And so now, the whole idea is to put lipstick on the pig. Look, he's the president. You don't have to decorate him. Now you need to hold him to the high standards. I now understand that they will not hold him to the high standards. Not only, I'm not just talking about the Republican Party. I'm talking about the religious community won't hold him to higher standards. And I'm accepting it. I'm not complaining about it. So I want you to understand that those of you who are holier than thou, I don't put a lot of stock in your faith. I just don't. And not that that matters to you. But, you know, telling me you're a good Christian doesn't mean jack crap to me. I see you just as another devil, to be quite frank. I'm just going to tell you that. I don't. Look, I don't see how anyone can ignore the sinful behavior of this guy's character. I'm just sorry. I don't. And I'm not using the devil in the context of Minister Farrakhan. I'm using it in the context of religion. It's just like, well, the behavior is there. You can't ignore the behavior. It's there. You just can't ignore that. So, you know, I'm of the opinion that Mueller is going to go into the next round in this first quarter. He's going to go into the financial connections. He is. He's going to take it to the Deutsche Bank, and he's going to show where there has been financial manipulations here and/or gains. And I think that was the one thing that Donald John, he gave warning to. Mueller, don't go into my personal finances.
Don't look at the bank, okay? Just
don't go there.
Overlook the bank.
And so I think that's and for those of you who've ever dealt with the feds and their investigation, that's how they do it. That's how they do it. Time is on their side, money's on their side, and so they go, okay. So now what we got to do is get a few folks to plead guilty to misrepresenting, lying, and then we start connecting the monetary dots, because there are monetary dots, folks, and likely not. Boy, so much swatting. Did you guys deal with this swatting situation last week, bro?
Only very briefly.
So it's a swatting game that has resulted in Andrew Finch being killed.
Well, there's no game. This is life and death, and this is real life consequences to this what had been called a prank. That is a misnomer. But basically, these two individuals got into it playing Call of Duty online with each other, and one person got the other person's personal information, i.e. his home address and a little bit of biographical information to make the 911 call sound believable or believable enough.
Well, let me just tell you, we're gonna play that 911 call, and you're gonna hear, unfortunately, Finch being shot on his front porch, unarmed. And it speaks volumes not only about swatting, but also about very poor policing. And it's about time, I hope, that stops. The signs are not good that it will, however. Just going to tell you that. We'll get to that. Also, the alt-right guy who killed one cop, wounded, 4 or 5 others?
4 others, yeah.
Incredible. You heard me right. I said alt. Is he, in other words, this guy is a white supremacist.
Yeah. It's just a new term for an old.
Why we gotta change it? Is it white supremacy? Is it white supremacy?
Branding. It's all about branding.
Actually, it's about terrorism, right? This guy, he's running for office, wasn't
he? He was attempting to run for office. Yeah, former veteran.
All right, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to poor Mississippi here. And we're gonna weigh in as well on the Emancipation Proclamation. We're gonna take your calls. There are signs here, if you care to take note of them. I've got a few more, too. The social signs is even more curious. Hang tight. Quick break. 228-896-9455. That's the number to call. Bedrock, you're next. We'll be back.
It's about that time to get away.